Women in Leadership Global is proud to honor an outstanding female leader each month, recognizing women who embody leadership excellence and individuals who are reshaping the future of our industry. And I think we can all agree in today's world of constant change, that is no small feat. And this month, that honor goes to Emily Portney, with an extraordinary career spanning senior roles at JP Morgan, Barclays, and now global head of asset servicing, the largest business at BNY. Emily has built a truly stellar track record. And if we think of the word build, it comes from the verb to build. So there's been a lot of action in creating the impact that she's had. So today we get to go behind the curtain with Emily and unpack some of those leadership kernels, the insights, the decisions, the lessons that have shaped her journey. So Emily, I have been looking forward to this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Georgie. It's a pleasure to be here.
I know you travel a lot. So where are you residing today?
Actually, today I am in my office in New York, and actually having spent probably 75% of my time in the first half of the year on the road, I have actually grounded myself this summer, starting literally last week. So for the next 6 weeks, I will be in New York. And I am enjoying the fact that I do not have to pack a bag nor get on a plane.
And I am going to ask you later on about Carry On. I heard you in an interview speak to the fact that wherever you go in the world, for however long, you are able to get everything into carry on luggage only. So that question is coming. So you're in New York. Did you watch the World Cup yesterday?
I did. And I actually had a pleasure of being there in person. We actually hosted several clients, so it was really exciting. I actually was rooting for Spain, so it was the outcome that I really wanted. So it was great.
It's interesting. I do wonder in the UK today how many people are calling off sick because of the late night. But it was spectacular. And I was also rooting for Spain. So look, today we're going to talk about your career. And I always find it interesting to let's get to know about you. Who are you when you're not in the seat that you sit in? And where did it all start? So I want to go back to childhood. What was your first ever paid job?
First ever was babysitting. Yeah, first ever, probably 14, 15, babysitting. Yep. And then the second ever was I was a pool attendant at our neighborhood pool. So those are my first two paying jobs. And the third, by the way, was, which I might mention as well, was literally like closing envelopes. Like I would spend hours on a day working at a collections company and literally like licking envelopes or like sponging envelopes to close them.
Okay.
Very exciting.
So we've got some diversity there, pool attendant, babysitting. And I think it's really interesting when we look back at the jobs we had in our formative careers, there are threads of that or that still feed into our leadership today. So when you think about babysitting, many of us, I think, were babysitters early in our journeys. What are some of those lessons that still apply for you today?
Certainly work ethic, right? Just, you have to be on time, you have to, be responsible, etc. So, I mean, the work ethic came in irrespective of any of those three jobs. Likewise, adaptability. If you babysit, even as a young kid, you never know what the kids that you are babysitting are going to do. So adaptability. And I'd say communication as well. So I think you learn, especially when you're 14, 15, and your interface is an adult, right? Another adult, you're kind of just learning also how to interact with other folks who are just, I guess, what you at the time would have thought are more senior than you, right?
Those are such critical ones. Be on time, manners matter, be responsible, adaptability. I think the world we live in today, it requires us to be adaptable, that AI, that adaptability quotient. And communication, interpersonal skills, also critical. We're going to stick with the early years. Your parents, are there any lessons that they gave you that have prepared you for where you're at today?
100%. So I was what they called in America, I don't know if this translates, a latchkey kid. So I have a single mom. She raised myself and my sister while working a full-time job. So that did kind of cause us, if you will, or allow us, empower us to some degree, I think, to be very resilient and probably very responsible. So, we'd come home after school and I'd make myself like a little snack and I'd, have to do my homework, etc. Like I had to actually fend for myself to some degree. And so I think there was a level of accountability and responsibility from a somewhat early age and independence. Having said that, I think the work ethic that I saw in my mom, that my mom, actually, I saw how hard she was working, not only at her profession, but also raising us two young and then teenage girls who weren't always the easiest. And I think that also just gave me a lot of respect for a working, for a working woman, frankly. She was a role model. And I do also remember like distinctly, and I must have been quite young, but I do remember, she would get dressed up as in a suit and tell me about a presentation that she would have to do in front of like hundreds of individuals. And I was just like, wow, like my mom does something like that. And just having like kind of an appreciation that there was a whole nother side and a whole nother life of hers that I just didn't really see every day. But was very curious about. So all of that I think played into a bit of um, ultimately how I saw myself potentially as I was growing up.
Yeah, it's in that word curious. I think that's another kind of such a core skill in today's world. But you mentioned your sister. I'm curious if we can stick with that word. How would your sister describe you?
She would probably say there are two Emilys. There is the work Emily, and then there is the sister Emily. And the work Emily is more serious.
There is a new term, whether it's made it into the dictionary yet, decision-making fatigue. So I think
There you
that
go.
is real. And you talked about common sense. I think sometimes common sense isn't always common practice. So you are in good company. You mentioned one of the words that your sister would use to describe you as there be a degree of vulnerability that she sees. And I know within the organization, within BNY, you are known for being, global head of asset servicing, but you are also known for these quick takes. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that, because that is about deepening connection with people and people getting to see there is a person behind the title. I'm not invincible. I have days where everything goes wonderfully and I get to create, and there's days where I'm challenged. So I'd love to hear the origin of that and what do you feel that's given you in terms of your leadership?
So quick takes to some degree have become my leadership trademark, which is really funny. I started them about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, when I became the CEO of asset servicing. And I did so, in all honesty, because the organization was so big, several thousand individuals, that I just felt that I needed and I wanted a way to ensure that folks kind of knew me a bit better and the real me, that I wasn't just this leader, that I also was always, I call it, I'm a work in progress. We're all a work in progress. I wanted people to feel that I was approachable, that I was human, that I was empathetic, that I also, was vulnerable. And so I started these. Literally, they are notes that I send every Monday. They're very short. I stick to email. I still believe in email, actually. They must be literally no more than like two or maybe three paragraphs. So it all has to be seen within the same window. And they're very personal. In fact, it was funny because when I pitched this idea, or started to do this idea, and I was working with my colleagues in comms, they kept trying actually almost to make it more corporate. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't want this to be corporate. It isn't about what's happening, in the world of business. This is about leadership. This is about me. So I've written from everything from sneakers taking off to sunsets to what's strange about hotel rooms, like, when the light switch or the plug is like, across the room, to my sister and the relationship that you have in your family, that when you see your family again, you always kind of go back to whatever you were, like the little
Yeah.
sister. And these have become, I mean, to some degree, my calling card whenever I travel around the world. Folks, not just even in asset servicing, so they have this following that's even broader than I understood. And people will stop me in the elevators, and I'll get questions at town halls, around, just my quick takes and how do I come up with the ideas, or what's my next one going to be about, etc. So they truly resonate, and I think they have made me human. And that is probably one of, I do have to say, the reaction has probably been one of the things I am most proud of in any leadership position I've ever had, to be honest.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me is when you speak from the heart, you connect to the heart. And so when you're speaking from like these are real life lessons, not the show real life ones of polished on like but this is real stuff.
Yeah.
And I think trust is born from rapport and knowing more about people and being able to see that we've all got different textures. And some days we show up as our best selves, and that there's a delta between our best selves and our not best selves. And sometimes that's because there's just so much going on. But to really feel we get to know someone, I think that connection is such a currency to that.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
And has there been one that, like, well, I suppose when in terms of when you've been, meeting people in the elevator, what would you say is one that's landed, has had the greatest response? Or what do you think was it about that had the biggest response? Or are they all equally?
I mean, it's all equally, but there was one where actually someone wrote me, because I do get, messages on the back of them, and someone wrote that, I shared this one with my daughter. She was going through a tough time, and I just explained, I shared this one to say, see, people of all levels and all backgrounds and all, frankly, kind of degrees of success, if you will, do struggle.
And I think what strikes me as one is you don't know what you're creating, where it creates a ripple. You don't know
Agreed.
how that is rippling out, and not just to your organization, but people are sharing that with family and friends.
Absolutely. I'm amazed actually by how much people are sharing with family and friends. So I had one instance where someone wrote to me and said they shared one of my quick takes with their daughter who was going through a tough time, and just really as a teaching moment to let them know that their struggles are like others' struggles. I've had people who just tell me that they've enjoyed a laugh. I've had others who just enjoy the picture, and want to then share like their either moments in time from their a family vacation, a reading list, their favorite movies. So it's great. It's a real also way to create an interaction and a channel of communication that frankly would never be open in what is otherwise an incredibly structured world.
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes what I often think, what's everyone else doing and how do we do it differently? And I think it takes time, but the impact that has. And I imagine actually thinking about ideas, there's probably, you keep like this running inventory. So, because there's teaching
Yes.
moments everywhere. So it's like, how do I capture them all?
Well, I do. It's exactly right. I do keep an inventory. Like I'll just randomly think of something, and we do have an inventory. We don't really write them. I don't really write them until literally the Sunday. And I have a partner who looks them over just to make sure that they will, like, it makes sense and like what I'm saying. And it would resonate. But I have an inventory, and a lot of times things do actually come up. Like it's very like topical, relevant, especially on my travels, etc. But if I'm ever struggling for an idea, we do have an inventory, and that does help in terms of piquing interest and helping me think of something that hopefully will resonate.
Well, talk about resonating. I've always loved the saying, win the morning, win the day. And look, I am a morning lark. I'm not a night owl. I would love to be both. But again, morning lark it is. I strongly believe that how we start our day influences our cognition, our decision making ability. So, first 30 minutes in the morning, what does that look like for you?
I'm gonna laugh because, like, the joke is I am not a morning person, and any of my friends or anyone who works with me knows I am not the morning person, and I do need sleep. Like, I sleep like minimum 6 hours, usually 6 to 7 hours a night, and then I will catch up a little bit on the weekends. I get up probably around 6 o'clock. If I'm doing Pilates, I'll get up a little bit earlier. I try to do Pilates 3 times a week. That's my kind of go-to exercise, and especially at this age, building like core strength and strength for posture, etc., is important. But once I get up, usually the first 30 minutes is having a cup of coffee, reading the newspaper or news in general. My go-to is FT, followed by the Wall Street Journal and also Bloomberg. I'll review the headlines in Bloomberg, and then of course check email. But that's kind of how the first 30 minutes are, usually over a hot cup of coffee.
They do say sleep. You mentioned sleep is the Swiss Army knife of of health. So I think
Yes.
that 6 hours, or we've all got a different. Some need 8, some need 4, some need 6. So it's knowing your own body and what you need and putting the conditions
Yes.
in place.
And I just got the Aura ring. Literally, yeah, just got it. And I kind of been debating about it, but it is interesting to, for the first time, truly track my sleep and the effectiveness, if you will, of my sleep. So far, it's actually I agree with what it says, but we'll see if it becomes a stress. If it becomes an object of stress, I am going to cut it out. So right now, I'm in like week 2 or 3.
Okay, so my Aura ring and I did have a conscious decoupling, or a conscious uncoupling a few weeks ago because I got too obsessed with the data. I was trying to
Yeah.
outperform my own stats, and I'm like, and the data is amazing, and it's like, what does a healthy engagement look like with the data?
Yep, exactly. You have to kind of have a healthy perspective about it. It's the trend that matters and overall signals versus getting too over focused on it.
Yeah, I love what you said there because that's such a thing importance in life. It's the trend that matters versus and often we look at situations that are isolated, but let's look at the trends. So look, nobody moves upwards and onwards in their career without the support of others. I often think of it about as relationship currency. We can focus on performance currency, our KPIs, our objectives. Relationships are so critical. So, who in your career has been a significant mentor, and what do they teach you? Like, what were the lessons that you gleaned from them?
I've had the benefit of many mentors, and so I do consider myself incredibly fortunate. And frankly, that is perhaps a lesson to everyone watching: is that at any point in time in your career, I mean, I've been in this industry well over 30 years. There are going to be, you're going to have different mentors or different sponsors at different points in time in your career. And that's important. And so, it hasn't been just one person. Someone who I know is known to both you and I, Carlos Hernandez, I worked for him for gosh, in excess of a decade, and he still is to this day a sponsor and a mentor. And he probably had one of the biggest impacts in my career, but not just professionally. I mean, obviously his work ethic, his approach to challenging situations, all of those things I learned a ton from, not to mention his business knowledge, technical expertise. But I think he also really taught me the importance of humility,
Yeah.
the importance of connectivity with people, like actually having a personal connection. He also taught me perspective. Just like taking a step back and just perspective. And I guess also, or he tried to teach me. I laugh because he'd probably still say, and I'm still, like I said, a work in progress. But the power of pause, right, is truly, taking a deep breath, pausing, and thinking. Of course, thinking before you respond. So, he's been a tremendous, impact and has had a tremendous impact and influence on both me professionally and personally. Having said that, I also would highlight Robin Vince, our current CEO of BNY, who I think is an absolutely extraordinary leader. I learn from him every day. When I think about the transformation he has led across BNY in what is actually an incredibly short period of time, call it 4 years. And he has taken us from what was probably considered a pretty sleepy institution into what is now recognized as a top class, outperforming franchise that has completely desiloed. We now work really well together. We solution for our clients. We are also embracing technology and innovation. We are agile. We are nimble, and that that is not only happening internally. There's an enthusiasm and an excitement working here, but it is absolutely also resonating with all of our stakeholders, whether it is clients, whether it is investors, etc. So to sit back and watch that and see how a leader has helped and actually empowered the organization to change from inside out has been an incredible experience. And I am very fortunate to be a part of that journey.
Yeah, the excitement and the enthusiasm you mentioned, I think emotions are infectious, and leaders set the tone. You know, you're a leader, so you have your own organization. Robin, the CEO. You know, I think our energy introduces us before we speak. So there is something there, and I said earlier, where we speak from is where we connect to. So when someone is coming from that place of excitement and enthusiasm, it's like, I want to be on that train. I want to be in the train of transformation and reimagining the future.
Absolutely. But it is not just that transformation. It is also, and I should highlight, because I do think this was such an important moment for me, it's also his personal touch. I was our CFO for several years before I became the head of asset servicing. And when I was CFO, he had just come into the CEO seat. So we did do a few earnings calls together. And I will never forget, as CFO, I was nervous. I mean, the earnings call is a high pressure situation. I used to describe it as, you're studying for a final exam because you could get any question under the sun. And so it was very, like I said, it was very high stress. I will never forget. It was probably our second earnings call together, and we were preparing. And if you know anything about the earnings call, there's you kind of give a full fledged update. Usually it's pre-recorded. Pretty much most banks that I know pre-record this the just the intro remarks, if you will. And so, but you're sitting in a room, hearing, listening to the intro remarks, and the clock is ticking down, and you're just waiting for the call to open up for the analyst questions. And that could go on for about 20, 25 minutes. And I remember he must have seen how stressed I was. And so he cued me and told me to come out of the room. And we had like IR there and tech support there and a few others there. And he said to come to the room next door. And I did, another conference room. And it was, 7:30 in the morning. And he just took his phone out. He played music, like he just blasted music as we looked over the skyline of New York City. And he just said, just take a deep breath. But he just took me outside of the situation and was able to just like instill a calmness, and also to some degree reset and get me more confident
Yeah.
at that moment. And I tell that story, periodically, because it also just shows you the kind of leader he is, the kind of leader that I want to be. He saw that I was stressed. And by the way, he must have been stressed too. And he just took me out of out of it. And the fact that he did that he noticed, that he took the time, that he really personally cared enough to do that, meant so much to me as as a human being and as my boss, frankly. And so I say that too because I admire him so much, not just for what he's doing here at BNY, but also the empathy he had for me in that moment and has for us, every day.
The words that come to me like human-led leadership
Yep.
and the ability to read the room, and it links to what you said about Carlos, the power and the pause.
Yes.
He gave you a pause, taking you out of the pressure cooker to be like, right, let's just reset.
Yes.
Because when emotion runs high, intellect runs low. We're coming from an emotional place, so sometimes just take people out just to recalibrate.
Yep.
And those high stress moments that you speak to, I mean, as leaders.
By the way, it was the Script Hall of Fame.
Oh, I love that.
I'm like, what is that song?
That's what I have a go.
It's a great motivational song. Like if you're ever like you need somebody to pick you up and give you confidence, it's a great song.
I have it on my list. So whenever I do a keynote, I'll put music in my ears. It can just change the energetic state.
Totally.
Okay, well, again, it's an incredible song. So those, as leaders, where look, high stress comes with the territory. In that situation, Robin, was like, right, let's take ourselves out of the situation. A song, changes your energetic state. What are your go-to kind of practical strategies when you are in high stress moments in order to, it doesn't, we can't remove stress, but we can make sure
Right.
that we're, regulating our own emotions.
Certainly the pause. I've gotten better at, deep breath. Take a walk around the floor, a walk around the block if you have to. Important. Don't send the email. Just wait. And that has that is a really good trick. Took me a while to actually adopt it after so many people told me I should, but now I do routinely, and it is a very good trick. Also, I try to disconnect on the weekends, at least for one day. I really do. Whether it is, going for a walk with friends, doing Pilates, going to the beach, if it's summertime. I do getting, I do think having your brain like click off, turn off is really important. I think doing that on the weekends, finding an afternoon or a morning to truly do that where you are not on email.
Yeah.
Likewise, I'm a firm believer that vacations are important. Always have your next vacation planned, have something to look forward to. And my husband and I usually try to take one very active vacation a year. And that is specifically so your brain is turned off or focused on something completely different. So whether it was Machu Picchu, whether it was Iceland, we try to do something very active so you cannot possibly be thinking about work and you get a break from work.
Yeah. Do you know what? Athletes have something called QRT, quality recovery time. And they know that when they rest, they come out fitter, faster, stronger. And the world we live in, many of us are corporate athletes. And it's not even a marathon that we're sprinting a day. It's like multi ultra marathons. And I remember my coach saying to me years ago, like, no one's coming to save you. Like
Yeah.
you have to take your vacation. No one's going to say, do you know what, Emily, you've done so well. Like, just make sure you take your vacation. Like, you've got to do it
Yeah.
yourself. And it's also as leaders, I suppose you're role modeling to others. Do take time out, like, but honor the space so you can be the best you can be when you're in the office.
Yep. Absolutely.
You talked about the power and the pause. It made me think about my mini Yoda, which I have next to me, because when I'm emotionally like triggered, I'm like, what would my wisest self do? And this little Jedi has got thousands of years of experience, and sometimes my wisest self, it's a very different response to my emotionally reactive self.
Indeed. Yep. Absolutely. And I think as you get, as you get older, you start to appreciate that even more, and hopefully get a bit more attuned to it and able to self-regulate.
Right. Not always easy. It's what I think it's still in training for, which is and look, when you think about leadership, as you and we talked about mentorship, and there's many things that are shared to you because that mentorship comes from experience in terms of these are the things you do, these are things to avoid. What do you think is one thing people don't share, but you kind of think, well, I wish you'd told me.
Actually, the power of vulnerability, I think, is something that people don't share. And actually, you might make a mistake early on trying to cover that up. Like thinking like, oh, if I admit I don't know something, or if I have messed up and actually kind of owning it, perhaps even apologizing and acknowledging it. And so I think that goes a long, long way. And I do get comments back that people appreciate my authenticity and in conjunction with that, my vulnerability. It makes me human. So I think that's something people shouldn't be afraid of and should embrace more. Second, I would just say is look, the rules change over time in your career. The rules change when, that saying is oh so true. What got you there won't get you, what got you here won't get you there. And no one ever tells you, gee, it's at this moment in time when you've just been promoted to managing director, or but this happens that, suddenly, the rules are changing and you should act, or you need to, present yourself a bit differently. Those things you kind of learn, over time, probably by, messing up a little bit. So I just think all the recognition, also the recognition that a career is fluid, that you're always learning, that what got you here won't get you there, that you do have to be adaptable. And by the way, it's very helpful if someone close and safe to you can tell you, guess what? The rules change, and I think you probably don't know it. And let me help you understand. Suddenly you are the leader, and everything you do and everything you say is amplified. And you might not think that what you're saying is a big deal or how you said it is a big deal, but wow, the weight that it has for the rest of the organization, know that. And you're just like, really? Because when I look in the mirror, I still see the 21-year-old who doesn't know anything about financial services. So, I do think also having that very safe space of folks who can also let you know when you need to course correct or tweak along the edges is very helpful.
Yeah, that trusted tribe. I think we all need a trusted tribe.
Yes.
And it's interesting what you said about the wake, because I think that's just such a really interesting and really valuable metaphor. And a client, a C-suite client recently said, she said, you can't whisper from the parapet, like you are in the pulpit, sorry, the pulpit.
Yes.
Because like it's like a lighthouse, it's beaming out everywhere. So you've got
Yeah.
to be really conscious, like be vulnerable, be authentic, but still be really thoughtful about how the message can be construed or how people might interpret it. So it's this, I suppose, this continual balancing of like, okay, I want to share this and just being thoughtful around how that can ripple out and the wake it could leave.
Absolutely. Yep.
And as a very senior female leader in the industry and having been an executive for a long time now, look, I grew up in the corporate world as well. And it's been a very male dominated environment. But what's been your experience?
Well, the good news is it's a lot less so, right? Male dominated. And even like when I think about the executive committee at BNY, I mean, 50% are female. It's a very diverse organization. Likewise, same about our board. I do think it has changed. But what I would say is certainly when I started out, in 1993, and especially because I was in banking and in more in the trading environment, it definitely, I was one of the sole, women in many, woman in many, many different rooms. Now, what I find in hindsight, I actually think that was to my benefit because if you were capable, you were noticed, right? Everyone knew your name. Everyone kind of knew who you were. Now, with that came a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
With that, you always felt you were under a microscope to some degree, but it also is something that differentiated you. And like I said, if you were capable, I think actually helped to some degree in terms of rapid promotion and, having some opportunities that, perhaps if I hadn't been noticed, the opportunities were not because I was a woman. It was just more that perhaps my name was known and therefore it was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, let's consider her. That doesn't mean I got them all. There were several positions I didn't, but I do think generally speaking, it was somewhat helpful. I mean, the other thing I would say, and look, there was always though a pressure to, to some degree to just be one of the gang, right? I mean, and I think that has dissipated a bit over time. I think we are much more appreciative of bringing our authentic self to work, in the 90s for sure, and probably for some time even thereafter, just being one of the gang, I don't want to say one of the boys, but one of the gang
Mm.
that, could hang and just, socialize. I mean, that was, quite important.
Yeah.
I do credit some of my mentors and sponsors for not only opening, professional doors and for opportunities, but I think one thing all of us as leaders can do is also open doors for individuals to be seen as a person in personal situations or social settings.
Yeah.
So, going out for a drink, inviting folks, or for that matter, whether, in a client event or a celebration or just a lunch with other senior folks, because inevitably, when you start to, and again, I see it even with clients, the second you meet a client and it is no longer transactional, but there's a personal social setting, the whole relationship just kind of changes and the tone changes. And therefore, if you ever go through a hard time with that client later on, you suddenly have more to draw upon. You have a stronger foundation. So I do think the opening of the doors also in social settings is something very that we all can do for more junior folks coming up the ranks.
Yeah, and that ability to get to know people, it speaks about your quick takes. It's about the ability to know
Totally.
people, and I think that socialization. It's there's a saying that, and I don't know where I've taken this from, but like proximity is power, and I don't mean power as in force, but power as in visibility. Being, to your point, people knowing your name, knowing what you stand for, your personal brand cultivation, and sometimes as leaders, to your point, it's like we get to open doors for others. But they have to be capable. Hard work is a minimum. Work ethic, timeliness. Being
All
prepared.
those things.
Things we talked about. And as the people are coming through, those are the things. Those are the qualities, aren't they, that get recognized, that make people stand out. Performance is expected. Like if you work at
Yes,
BNY, you expect to be a star performer. So what are the characteristics that you're bringing to the role?
absolutely. Yeah.
And look, I want to jump to like knowing what you know now, and I wasn't going to ask, but I think a couple and a half of decades in to your career, what would you do differently, and what would you do the same?
Oh, wow. I'd have more patience. I would. By the way, I would have more patience not just in my professional life, but in my personal life too. I think my husband would appreciate that. My family would appreciate that. There is a saying, and I do truly believe it. I didn't learn it until a couple of years ago, but it's so, so true that I think it's something to the effect of together you might go slower, but you'll definitely go farther. And it is so, so true. Especially for some of us in this industry in financial services and banking in particular, we're all type A, we're very results oriented. You just want to get it done. And I have certainly learned that it's really critical to bring people along.
Mm.
It's also really critical to syndicate things beforehand, especially if they are somewhat sensitive and challenging, issues. You don't want to just dump it in the middle of the table. Trust is so key in taking organizations farther and transforming organizations and building trust. It can take, months, if not years. Destroying trust can happen very, very quickly. Hence the pause and likewise the collaboration and the syndication is really, really important.
The patience you spoke to, I can't remember. I think it might have been my coach with me actually. Patient urgency. So like, yeah, there is an urgency, but there's patient urgency. And I love what you said about syndicating things, and that's not time out, that's time invested. And I think many of us can live in this paucity of time, and actually those things, like, they matter. And you mentioned trust, and high performing athletes speak to trust being the oxygen of champions, because it's
Yep.
that's what binds teams, and that comes from actions and words aligning. And you want high performing teams, they trust each other. Typically they trust each other.
Yep. I think that's fundamental to a high performing team. Trust.
Yeah, which we saw yesterday with Spain. Spain trust
100%.
that.
Yes,
There's a
absolutely.
reason that they won the World Cup. It's not by chance. And if you hadn't gone, I mean, you've had this stellar career, in financial services. If you hadn't gone into finance, what we start off as a pool attendant and a babysitter. I'm not sure, that would have been the correct one. But or sticking envelopes, but what would you have done instead?
Yeah, the envelopes. The envelopes would be probably a teacher, a history teacher, or a movie producer.
Oh, that's very, very different.
I
And
know. I mean, I don't know that I'd be a very successful movie producer, but I just like I love movies. I love, just the way they just take you away. Look, my favorite rag is still People magazine. I probably know more about the royals and at least stars that are my age and my age group than anyone else does. So I'm also very organized, and I think that's part of like why I guess that would have been a fun career, but that wasn't my calling, and I think it's probably too late.
You never know. Never know. They do say like portfolio careers now. So let's revisit that in 5 years' time and see. And you, as I know from conversations I've had with people at BNY, you really care about the next generation. It's something that's very close to your heart. What advice? We're in the middle of summer. Well, maybe the summer interns have been there for a little while now. But what is your advice for new starters?
I actually tell them to just, to be consistently curious,
Mm.
ask a lot of questions. They're so fortunate and lucky. I mean, they're at that point in their career where they're not expected to know anything. So, like, literally just absorb, be a sponge. I mean, that's definitely what I tell the interns and even, folks just starting out as analysts. And also collaboration, partnership. It is important, of course, to master your job, but equally important is looking right, looking left, and being a good partner.
Yeah, because it is about people. I know, again, we've talked about AI, but fundamentally, people, connection, be a good partner. What does
Yep.
it mean to be a good partner? And when you think about being a good partner, what would you say are the key attributes to good partnership?
I think that empathy, the empathy that Robin showed me, the going the extra mile, if someone is struggling, actually pausing and saying, "Is everything okay? Can I help you? Do you need help?" Really important. Celebrating others' wins, also incredibly important. Sharing your own successes, because everything is a real, and especially in our world, is a collaboration. It is the culmination of a village of effort. So those are a couple of things that I think are just good things to keep in mind.
I love that. Well, look, I have a very quick fire round, which I haven't briefed you for.
Oh,
So,
you have not.
okay, no, this is again, we're going to go back. We're going to
And
circle.
we actually did this without AI. I mean, we didn't even say AI, maybe once.
We didn't, which is good. And I should say, I listened as I was preparing for this. I listened recently to your the episode you did with Nizy, and I think it's called
Oh,
Inside
yeah.
the House. So I think if anyone wants to learn about asset servicing, like that is a really great and insightful. Well, it captures your role. It
Yes.
captures all about BNY. This is all about the human side of leadership.
100%.
So I will
I'm just
point
kidding.
people to ICE for that. What's the last book you enjoyed? First question.
Oh, wow. One of my favorite books is Shoe Dog. I love Shoe Dog. It isn't the last book I read, but the Phil Knight story. It's just such a wonderful story of just, kind of to some degree, the benefit of naivete, resilience, humility. I just love it. It's a great, lesson and just an enjoyable story. I just finished 1929, which Andrew Ross Sorkin, also very interesting read. Again, I thought I kind of knew and understood everything about the crash in 1929. I actually learned a lot. And look, I'm not. That's not to say that I think the situation today is akin to the situation then, but there are some parallels, and so there are certainly some takeaways for all of us if you read that book as well.
Yeah, I think that history has patterns, and you've used the word
Yes.
curious. It's coming to books with curiosity. You know what you know, but what are the things that you don't know? And they say your vibe attracts your tribe. So it doesn't surprise me the shoe dog story, because it's about resilience, it's about humility.
Yes.
There are so many characteristics of his leadership that speak to the leadership that you embody. A streaming series that you've loved.
Oh gosh. I don't like traveling, believe it or not. Look, I love traveling. I love seeing new places. I don't like airplanes. I should be very specific. I don't like being on an airplane, which is kind of ironic because I'm in totally the wrong line of work because I am on long haul flights all the time, and short haul flights all the time. So I download series because that is what helps me pass the time and actually take my mind off the fact that I'm in the air. Gosh, there's so many, but Friends and Neighbors, great. Bad Sisters, great. Ted Lasso. Who
Oh,
doesn't love Ted Lasso? So I have a whole bunch that I love, and to me, getting lost in a series is the best way to forget that you're on a plane.
um, I don't know if you saw, because you were at the game yesterday, whether you saw Ted Lasso. He was there. He
Yes,
had the
yes.
Justin Bieber with their Believe sign, but it was Belieber.
Yes, I loved it. Yes, it was so awesome. Yeah, to me that was probably the highlight of the halftime show. So no, it was great. I haven't seen the latest Ted Lasso series, the latest Ted Lasso series, but I'm looking forward to it. I do. It's such a. I love the things that are like happy, like oh, another good one is Loot. If you haven't ever seen Loot,
Notes.
Maya Rudolph, she's hysterical. First and second are better than the third, but like again, these like the ones that are just uplifting and fun and allow you to also just kind of laugh at yourself. Those are my favorite.
Okay, so two more questions. One app you can't live without on your phone, and why? Not your email or your WhatsApp.
Oh, one app that I can't live without. Oh, well, lately it's my Aura app, but that's
Okay.
only that's lately. Um, yeah, Aura is probably the one I'd say now.
Okay, and then the last question, which is just, it came up, I think, in your ICE interview. So this is just something that I personally want to take away. How do you go everywhere with carry-on luggage, even on a 3-week like work trip? Talk me through this, because there's clearly some mastery in this that you could monetize into a multi-billion-dollar business.
I wish. So yeah, I am religious about carry-on. I have not checked a piece of luggage in a decade, if not more. In fairness, it came from my husband. That's where I got it from. And I will swear by it now. I can, like I said, I can go, or you said, I can go 3 weeks to from business to a safari to literally a beach vacation all in one bag. You do have to do laundry along the way. So
Yeah.
you are committing to, paying up and doing laundry, whether it's a hotel or a laundromat. So you do have to do laundry, but a lot of it is shoes and color schemes. That's the secret.
Okay.
So basically, I have it down to basically 2 shoes. I wear my sneakers on the plane and then 2 shoes in the bag. One is like more of a like one is slightly more dressy, and one is something that can go from work to kind of a restaurant or pleasure, but is like a flat that is presentable, both like also if you just want to go out to dinner. So 2 shoes and no more. And then color schemes. So like literally it's like generally black pants, black shoes, and you spice it up a little bit with like a colorful blazer. So, you'd be shocked how 3 blazers can literally get you through 2 full weeks. Like, if everything else behind it is black and you got 3 colorful blazers, that can get you through 2 full weeks of work.
Okay, well, do you know, because I recently did a 10-day trip where I was carry on, but I put loads of stuff in my husband's and my children's luggage. So that doesn't count. Look, it's been such an insightful conversation. Honestly, we've had so many conversations over the years, and I always leave feeling lighter, inspired, with fresh new perspectives. So thank you for everything you're doing, not just for female leaders, but for leaders in general, because you can't become it when you can't see it. And you've got such interesting lessons and insights that everyone who listens to this will take away something they can put into their own arsenal. So I thank you deeply for that,
Thank you.
and for being such a wonderful recipient of our Women in Leadership Award.
Well, thank you, Georgie. You yourself as well are such an inspiration. So it is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. There we go. Thank you, Emily. I love that.
Sorry, there were a few places that you'll have to snip in,
This is the great thing with technology, easy to snip. So like that,
Yeah.
that's all. But did you felt that was all that felt?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, no, you're so, it's so great. I was a little sidetracked with the noise around me, but as long as it didn't pick up on you, then you
Yeah.
let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good week. Bye.
Thank you.